Hey Familia, Igni here. A ridiculous number of cards have been revealed since the last time we went through them, so let's go through all of them that have been revealed so far. I'm gonna be a little more brisk this time. It's bad. It's a 1/1 for 1 that sometimes has Bane, doesn't even have Rush with the Bane, so I don't see this being played at all. It's very good! You know, rotation's losing some ramp with the regular Aiela, so here's another one. It's an evolve effect this time, reminds me of Sky Dragon Ethica, but it's a 2 point 2/2 instead. So like how Magic Owl was an upgrade over Spectral Wizard, and we saw how that went. It's okay. It's a bit heavy for what it does. It does draw 2 cards, which is good, and it is ward. In general, there's better card draw out there right now, like Pure-Hearted Singer probably outclasses this. Rune has a lot better card draw than this card. Like I said, Pure-Hearted Singer, they have concentration now. I don't think this card is going to see play. Ah, the new Jeanne. Well, at 3, it's just a 2/3, which is okay actually, because Haven doesn't have that great 3-drops. And at 7, it can help clear the board and restore health to your other followers. I think the restore health is a bit less relevant, although it might be a little more relevant in rotation than it is in Unlimited, because in Unlimited, there's just so many really wide board clears. And we don't know how the landscape is exactly in rotation yet. I think the 3 damage is definitely more relevant, though. To all enemy followers only, though, not to the face. But 3 damage board damage on a body is not too shabby for 7, I don't think, so I actually could totally see this being played. I don't think this card is going to see play. The payoff isn't that great for what you have to do in having to buff it a lot. Whereas with Fita, for example, you could at least cycle through your deck and draw more cards to get more fuel. Well, this just does 1 damage pings to random enemy followers, which, while it could be effective sometimes, I feel like a lot of the time it's just going to be not that great, especially when it comes with a pretty hefty body at 3, for Forest at least. Ah, Chronos! Well, it's very expensive, and it's a 4/3 that doesn't exactly impact the board at all. But if Portalcraft mill becomes a thing, because Portalcraft ends up putting a lot of artifacts into your own deck so you can prevent yourself from milling, as well as having a lot of control tools like with the puppets, or just with, you know, a bunch of the controlling artifacts and, you know, spells. It does come a little bit late with a very weak stat line, though. We'll just have to see if Portalcraft's defensive package can keep them alive to this point, and if they'll ever have time to play the Chronos. In Unlimited, I think this is worse by a lot, just because a lot of finishes come before it. But in rotation, I think it can see play, depending on the environment that, you know, Portalcraft and other classes create for it, as well as just, you know, the speed of the metagame in general. And I think it's really cool that it creates this whole new archetype of deck of like milling that we haven't really seen before. I'm a big fan of the card. We'll just have to see if it's any good. This card is nowhere near as good as Soul Conversion by a long shot. A zombie is a 2-cost 2/2, and you're paying 1 to destroy an allied follower as well. So, which you're paying the cost to basically proc a last words. It's not the Soul Conversion replacement that people are touting it as, some people at least. I think it's an okay card. This is like bad Imprisoned Dragon, so I don't think it's going to see play. This card is actually very, very good, which makes me very, very, very happy. You ramp, and it's a turn like 5, say, 10, 11 with Rush that synergizes with PDK, and the dragons have 4 health, which is a really huge flashpoint because a lot of spells end up having 3 damage. Hungering Horde, say, Salamander. Of course, if you end up using the Rush to trade in, they end up being more susceptible, but still it just generates so much stats that impact immediately on the board as soon as you play it. Unlike regular Zirnitra, which just summons 5/5 dragons that don't impact immediately on the board, this card actually can be a huge tempo swing, as well as synergizing with PDK, which I really appreciate that they're pushing this other archetype. The fact that this is a 3-cost commander and pollutes round table is kind of a bummer, but the effect is actually not bad at all. +1 to an allied officer, so it's a buff. It's a 2/3, so it doesn't suffer anything in stats. And at 7, it gives +3/+2 instead. So in take 2, it's like Gabriel. Not as good, obviously, as Gabriel, but I think this is actually playable in take 2 for sure. And constructed, maybe not if all the sword decks are running round table. This card does a lot of things at once, and people are saying it's insane. I think it's very good, but it's nowhere near what people are saying it is, like, oh, better Albert. It's not better Albert. It has Rush instead of Storm, so it's not better Albert. And on turn 5, the 4 health doesn't help with the attack 2 times per turn thing. It'll just trade once, unless you're playing against like a board flood deck. And I noticed that in this expansion, there's a lot of tools against board flood decks. If you Necromancer 10, you can evolve this for free. That seems like a steep cost. What you really want to play this at is at 10 to gain Storm, which is very good, because then it can deal 10 damage if you also have Necromancy 10. So I could see this replacing the one-off Tyrant in mid-range lists for the rotation format. While versatile, I think the main use case is definitely going to be at Enhanced 10. And in rotation, maybe that's a good thing, because the metagame will hopefully slow down, but if the metagame is still reasonably fast enough that you can end before turn 10, then this card just ends up being, you know, a decent card with Rush. So, again, it's a very good card, don't get me wrong, has a lot of versatility, has a lot of finishing potential, but people are like going freaking crazy over it. This card is good. It wouldn't be good if it didn't have the fanfare if an allied amulet is in play, Gainstorm thing. If you have an allied amulet in play, which is very, very, very likely playing Haven, you get a 7 play point 3/7 ward that can impact the board and then leaves behind a big ward at the end. That rhymed way too many times. Of course, 3 damage Storm for 7, not the greatest thing in the world, but you know, it's not awful either, and just having a big body is pretty good. It can, of course, get removed pretty easily by, you know, spot removal, but with stuff like DOD, and I think Execution's rotating as well, with cards like that rotating out, I think this card, in rotation at least, could be pretty powerful. It's like a much worse Lion, if you think about it. Ancient Lion Spirit, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold. I think it's a bit clunky, it's a bit heavy, and the effect when you do get it off is not that rewarding. But could be okay in take 2. It's a 2 play point 2/2 that adds the artifacts into your deck. If you're playing a mill deck, if you're playing, you know, just artifact deck in Portal, which I'm sure will be a thing, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a staple. It randomly puts the 2 of the artifacts. I'm going to look at the artifacts here, analyzing Ancient, Mystic Artifact, and Radiant Artifact. They're all pretty good, but I think Radiant is probably the best because it has Storm. So I have Ancient Artifact, which is a 1 play point 3/1 rush. It's good, but it doesn't cycle, which makes this the worst one, I think. Because a lot of the time, polluting your own deck with artifacts is going to really dilute your draw. And just drawing this and nothing else instead of, like, you know, a power card, getting a 1 play point 3/1 with rush, while the 3/1 with rush stab point for 1 is very, very good, not cycling is going to be detrimental, I think. So this is probably the worst one. 3 play point 2/3 ward fanfare draw card. It's fanfare and it's draw card, so it cycles itself. Yeah, this one's alright. Last Words draw card. Last Words is less good than fanfare is, but this card is cheaper. The ward and immediate draw might be better in a controlling style deck, which is what seems like Portal is good at, but this is really good in curving out as well, just because, you know, 1 play point is easy to play with. I think they're both pretty alright. Now this one is good. It's clunky in that it's 5 play points, but it does have Storm. 5 play point 4/3 Storm is good. If it's your turn, then put a random artifact card from your deck into your hand. If it's your opponent's turn, draw a card. Either way, you're drawing a card on the Last Words effect. This card seems really strong. 3 play point 2/2, and then if you already have a board, summon a bunch of ghosts can really help you with trading, can help you with dealing that chip damage that you need to finish off later. I think this card is quite strong and could definitely see play. This requires something to be there. It can't be effectively played on curve as well. You probably have better 2-drops that compete with this. I don't think this is going to be played all that often. You know, this card is so good. 3 play point 1/5. We've seen how powerful a 5 health stat line is at 3. PDK, hello. And it gives your leader, whenever it takes damage during your turn, recover 1 play point as long as this is alive. If you can keep it alive 1 turn, you can go off on turn 4. You can play Razor Claw, and a Blood Wolf then on turn 4. And it's one of those things where if any other blood card comes out in the future while this is in the rotation format or just in Unlimited, this card is just going to get better if there are cards that come out that damage your leader. This card is very strong with a very strong stat line and a very strong effect. Treasure Map. I think this is a meme card. I'm just glad that Phoenix Juice isn't technically rotating now. Phoenix Juice is going to be in rotation for a long time. What if Rune can play this though with their spell boost like D-Shift? It's a 1 play point spell, you know, why not? Oh, this card is so good. A lot of the time they're going to trade their thing into your thing. You can use your cheap ping spells, Blazing Breath, AoE like Breath of Salamander, just trading into things. And this is extremely cheap hard removal. It also sets up for the next of itself by dealing damage to undamaged followers, and it even has utility against just a bunch of token decks, because dealing that 1 damage can often be enough to get rid of bats and, you know, wolves and fairies and wisps and all of them. So I think this card has a lot of utility, and it's just very strong removal, and I expect it to see play. Puts a Fairy Wisp into your hand, and then Enhanced 9 has the regular Fairy Princess effect of filling your hand with fairies. I think it's more often going to be played on 4, especially since it gives another Fairy Wisp on Evo, and Fairy Wisp is a very, very good card for enabling Forest. Not only combos, but also in aggro Forest just as a token. So this card is very versatile and very good, and I definitely expect it to see competitive play. Probably not for the Enhanced 9 cost, but definitely for the standard 4 cost and Evolve. And Fairy Wisp is a 0 play point 1/1. Fanfare banishes follower if at least 2 other cards were played this turn. It's a 0 play point card in Forest. In combo, you can banish it on the Fanfare just to clear board space, and in token, you can just play it first, and it won't get destroyed. But the fact that they also add the Fairy Wisp to your hand means that you can save it for later turns as well. I think this card is very, very strong in all archetypes of Forest, basically. This card is actually pretty good. If the metagame is slow enough, this card could end up doing a lot of burn over time. If they let it live. They probably won't let it live. But even so, it could also just do some chip. It could deal the finishing blow, 4 damage. You know, some people run Demonic Strike just to finish stuff off. In a vacuum, its cost, its stats, its effect. This card is very good. It's a cheap puppet generator, which is good. The stat line is very weak for its cost, but it does give you a puppet, which gives you a 1/1. So it could be taken as a 3-play.42 split across 2 bodies if you play the puppet immediately. But like I said last time, you kind of want to save the puppets, especially with this effect when you evolve it. The puppets gain +1/+0. I'm not sure if this is the card you want to be evolving over other cards, but could be relevant. Like if there's an aggressive puppet list, you could play this. The only problem is it is 1 health, so living is kind of a problem for this card. But if a puppet list arises, I wouldn't be surprised to see this in that list. This card is a pretty good puppet generator. It's cheap, it's 2.12, so you know the stat line is not the worst. 4 cards in hand, you put a puppet. If 3 or less, a puppet and itself. So you can just keep generating value with this thing. The only problem is it is the last word, so it's not immediately into your hand. So when you play it, it's just a 2.12. Rather than having the puppet that you might need for board control immediately, you just have to kill it off instead. Again, like the Toy Soldier, if there's a good puppet list, I would not be surprised to see this card in that list. 8-play.66 with Ward. Transform each sigil in your hand into a Thorn Burst. Do Earth Rites for your Earth Sigils in play to make them Thorn Burst. So it's not like Hulking Giant where you have to play this balancing act of having stuff on board or having stuff in hand. No, this just consumes all of it. It just consumes all of it and turns it into 2 play point, 3 damage to an enemy, Earthright, draw a card. So it is basically Rose Queen for Dirt Rune. Not a surprise that Rune is stealing mechanics from other classes yet again. The freaking Thief class strikes back. Well, it's an 8-play.66 with Ward straight up, which isn't terrible. Being able to just get that much burn in hand, the deck would have to be a bit slower to make room. Just because, you know, Levi burns also. It only consumes one thing, and it does it to all enemy followers and their face. Whereas this consumes everything and just gives you stuff in your hand that you have to play out still. It's a very slow card for sure. Not sure if it's going to make it into the more optimal lists, but if it turns out to be good, it's going to be pretty gross having that much burn in your hand. So Runecraft has a new mechanic with the Mysteria trait, wherein cards are going to get this Mysteria trait and synergize with each other. So Mysteria being a school of magic in the Rage of Bahamut Shadowverse lore. I actually quite like this mechanic. I think it forces you to build your deck in a different way if you want to get the most out of it. Because I think out of these 3 options, Mysterian Rite is by far the best. As itself, it's a 5-play.44 that gives you a card at the end of the turn. You know, it's a bit on the slow side, like a really expensive Stella. But I think the cards it gives you are probably better than Stella. And we're going to look at the cards now. So we got the Mysterian Missile here. Deal 3 damage to an enemy follower. Deal 1 damage to the enemy leader. That's very good. Remove stuff and deal damage. Summon a Clay Golem and give ward to all allied Clay Golems. Not bad. Summons a guy. Gives ward if you need it. It is random between the 2. You're not always going to get exactly the one you want, but it's only 2 outcomes, so it's not too bad. And if you play a Mysteria card beforehand, you get the Mysterian Rite, which reduces itself to 3 if you play another Mysteria card. And it deals 3 damage to an enemy, including potentially face. And it can summon a Guardian Golem. So it's a 3 damage spell and a 3/3 with ward. The thing with Hanna, which is interesting, is that maybe you want the 2 play point card instead of the 5 play point card because you need something cheaper. More Mysteria cards here. This one relies on the Mysterian Missile token and Mysterian Circle token we saw just now. It's a spell that generates a spell in Rune that's cheap. Synergizes not only with the new Mysteria mechanic, but also with spell boost. This one's the one to watch out for. This one is a less good Mysteria card, I think. If you've played another Mysteria card this turn, it puts the following cards into your hand, but it's a last words, meaning that if they just kill it on their turn, I assume you don't get the card. So you want to be killing this off on your own turn, which, while can happen, I think a lot of the time the opponent's just going to end up killing it. It can make your opponent be a little awkward in trades if you have multiple threats on board. But again, I think the effect is pretty niche, and pretty easy to play around by your opponent. Now we have Mysteria herself, so it's kind of like a JO Dragon, but only for spells on a body. The good thing about it is that it doesn't buff effect damage, so Levi isn't going to do 4 to all. Thank goodness it's only spells. It could be good. It's a 5-play.44, right? And the problem with JO Pendant is that it's a 5-play point nothing amulet. This one you can actually play it and evolve it and gain the effect of it, control the board a bit, and then just start burning the board, burning their face. It's not too bad at all, not too shabby. I could definitely see it being played, especially this new Mysterian burn rune potentially coming about, which is super cool. Whenever you play a Mysteria card, summon Bunnicorn Nick if you don't have Bunnicorn Nick. It's a 3.22. They're not the greatest on curve, obviously. But if you do play it on later turns, you get this thing. 1 play.11, last word, spell boosts the cards in your hand. You know, generating more bodies and potentially having it keep generating bodies over time that do something. My first reaction was that this card isn't all that great, but I think I'm really underestimating the power of having these multiple bodies that just keep coming out. But it relies on having Veil stay alive, which might be the problem. But in this limited amount of Mysteria synergy cards that we've gotten so far, it might see some play just because it does synergize with Mysteria cards. I'm not sure if it's gonna stay that way as time goes on. Havencraft. For when you really, really, really want to kill your opponent's followers. You know, this card is not bad, especially when Haven's losing a lot of its tools as well in the rotation. You know, you remove a thing, and potentially more than one thing for 5? Not too shabby. Oh, hey, it's the card I revealed. Check out my dank card reveal for this thing. Now, it's good. Storm can get its cost reduced, it's strong. Very good card. I don't think this is good. It looks like it doesn't do enough for what it costs. The biggest cost of this card is that it's in your deck. Cards cost a lot. Not just the play point on the card itself, but the fact that it takes up a slot in your deck. What does it do? Deal 2 damage to all followers. I don't expect to be very good. This card is good because it cycles itself. And as Sword, ideally, you're going to have a wide board anyway. If you need commander synergies to go off, you can also just activate them with Accolade now if you have an officer on board, which is pretty good, actually. So this card has utility in more ways than one. It's also just thematically great, and I think this is a really good way to give Sword card draw. And Sword did need more non-neutral based card draw, right? Thief wasn't cutting it, so maybe Accolade will. Evolve, deal 2 damage to X random enemy followers. X equals the number of cards played this turn. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. I mean, I may be wrong just because I'm not the most experienced Forest player in the world, but no, this card looks very, very strong. So it's like a more expensive Dead Moon Disciple that's neutral. Isn't that actually kind of scary? I'm sure there's some way somebody can build some list where they build a gigantic boy and then they play Chloe on it. Hulking Giant, B&B maybe. And a lot of the counterplays to these big boys is Ward. So if you just can make them ignore Ward, and it wasn't as big a problem in Shadow because, you know, having a 1 play.11 in your deck when you didn't have the target was bad. Having a 3 play.32 is actually less bad, I think. And the fact that it's neutral and can be put into other classes could make it harder to keep in check balance-wise, and it can pop up anywhere. Oh man, this can target ambushed followers as well, can't it? It might end up being nothing, but if it ends up being something, then it's very, very scary. This card is awesome. I think this card has the best name in the expansion so far. Magna Legacy. It's a big freaking gun. Magic blue boy cannon. Deal X damage to all enemy followers. This value equals the number of allied artifacts destroyed during this match? Oh, control portal is a thing. No, this card's, if artifacts are good, this card is good. Get the artifact cards out and they cycle themselves most of the time at least. And one of them has Rush, one of them has Storm, and one of them has Ward, so the enemy is probably going to have to kill them anyway. Again, it's hard to judge Portalcraft cards just because we don't know exactly what they're going to be like, but this one seems very good. Now, this one's a bit hard to judge because while drawing 2 cards and specific cards, the artifacts at that is fairly good. I'm not entirely certain, because we have never seen it before, how Artifact is going to exactly play out, and what builds are going to exist for Artifact decks. I think this card could make it in just because it draws 2 artifacts, which is very good. Could get you your rushes to control the board later on in the game. But at the same time, I could also see it cut, because it's a 5 play.44, it's a bit clunky, and it's a bit expensive for card draw. I can see it going either way. A 0 playpoint Portalcraft card, subtract 1 from the cost of an artifact card in your hand, put 3 copies of that artifact card into your deck? The mill is real! Whoa! Oh! Oh, that's so fun! Oh, Portal is gonna be so fun. Oh, this is sick. Oh, I like this. I like this a lot. This card is more predictable than the Mech Wing Boy we saw before. It's a 2 play.22 that doesn't lose anything in stats for putting 2 artifacts into your deck. And in artifact decks, you probably want artifacts, so that seems pretty good. The ancient artifacts are the one with Rush, though, and not Draw, which kind of gives me a little bit of pause, but I think, you know, as this review goes on, my opinion of the artifacts changes, I think. I think the ancient artifact is actually not as bad as I give it credit for. Like, it's still bad that it doesn't cycle, but Rush is good, especially in a controlling portal list, potentially. And this one can also draw a card if you evolve it. No, I think this card is good, and if Artifact is good, this could definitely see play. Gravikinetic Warrior. Oh, that is cool. I don't know if Artifact's gonna fit in all of these Artifact generators. Oh man, judging Portalcraft cards are hard because we've never seen it before. I keep saying this, but it's true. There's a lot of these Artifact generators now. This might be a bit much. Of course, in the middle of editing this video, the Shadowverse Twitter reveals a couple new cards alongside 2 new keyword effects for Shadowcraft. So we have Burial right here. If you have a follower in your hand and an open space in your area, put that follower into play. That follower loses all effects and then destroy that follower. So essentially, you destroy something from your hand to do something. And we have Reanimate here, randomly summon a copy of one of the highest cost allied followers that has been destroyed during this match and costs less than or equal to the Reanimate value. So this essentially destroys a card from your hand to draw a card. Kind of like a debricking tech. Just drawing is pretty good in Shadow. Hitting that Ector sooner, hitting, you know, those key cards sooner. This may not be as good as Andrealfest because it does destroy a card, although that may also play into synergizing with ghost generators like Soulcaller and Haunted House, as well as potentially synergizing with Reanimate to be able to reanimate the card that you destroyed with Gloomy Necromancer. More draw might just be good enough for Shadow, especially moving into rotation now that Soul Conversion is out, but it's not the best draw Shadow's ever gotten. Still think it could be played just by the virtue that it draws cards, and it could be interesting depending on what other Reanimate cards we see. This card seems really good. Like, it summons 2 skeletons, and once it counts down or is destroyed by other means, it summons something else. And the Necromancy 2 is going to be pretty trivial. And the Reanimate 2, most likely going to summon a 2-drop on your side that has died this game. Reminds me a little bit of Bone Chimera, and as Bone Chimera is rotating, I think that's pretty fitting that this card comes in. Seems pretty good. Reanimate access value equals your current turn number. Oh, that's super cool. We've never seen something like this before. And it potentially has some pretty powerful implications. Like, imagine at turn 7 Kawi, the Kawi dies, and then you turn 8 So Death, Reap Life, plus a 3-drop. I think if Control Shadow's a thing, this thing is very good, and if the game goes long enough, this card is going to get very, very powerful. We'll see if that kind of thing has a place in the metagame going forward, if the game speed allows for this kind of thing to be good, but in that world, I think this card is super strong. Finally, we have a first look at one of the alt leaders that are going to be coming out in this expansion, Aiela Dark General. You know what Dark General is. Now we know her name. They even got this nice little video here showing it off. Look at that. The new leader for Blood. Aiela Dark General. That's all the Shadowverse Chronogenesis cards that have been revealed on the official Shadowverse Twitter thus far. I was a bit more brisk in my explanations just because there were so many of them, but regardless, let me know what you think. Was I wrong on some of them? Do you agree with me on some of them? Did I miss something? Let's discuss the new cards in the comments below, have a bit of a discussion about it. That's it for this video. Like it if you did, don't if you didn't. Subscribe for more Shadowverse content and Chronogenesis hype in the very near future. And of course, thank you to my wonderful patrons who help to support the channel. I love ya. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.